Imagine deploying two highly advanced, completely opposite artificial intelligences into the Japanese stock market, like on the exact same day.
Right.
You give them strict operational parameters, you map out their tracking behaviors, and then you just watch as their underlying logic completely decouples from reality.
In real time, yeah.
Exactly, in real time. All while the major indices barely even register a tremor. That is the exact scenario we are unpacking today. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
For this analysis, we're dissecting a raw text file, simply titled notebook.txt, which, for you listening, contains algorithmic tracking logs for Japanese equities.
Along with a very specific observation report.
Yeah, from Team AI Labs Substack, dated May 19, 2026.
But before we touch a single data point in these logs, we really need to set a firm baseline for the listener.
Totally.
Our role today is strictly observational. Think of us as researchers analyzing a closed-loop simulation under extreme stress. We are charting algorithmic behavior, the mechanics of mathematical survival.
The friction between pure logic and market reality.
Exactly.
So just to be crystal clear, that means absolutely no buy or sell recommendations today.
Yeah, none.
No portfolio advice, and absolutely no predictions of future market movements. We are simply evaluating how two competing strategic philosophies attempt to navigate an extremely harsh, anomalous simulated environment.
Right, we're impartial scientists looking at a specific set of conditions.
Okay, let's unpack this,
Okay.
because looking at the source file, the researchers divided their tracking algorithms into two warring factions.
Two very different mindsets.
Yeah, you got Team Mountain Climbers operating on a logic called equilibrium detection, and then you have Team Wave Riders running on surging force tracking.
Right, and the philosophical divide between those two models, it dictates their entire mathematical structure.
How so?
Well, the mountain climbers are programmed to hunt for statistical stillness. They scan the volatility of the market and generate an inverse mathematical signal to identify a unit like an individual Japanese stock that represents the immovable center.
So they want stability.
Exactly. They're looking for mean reversion in its purest form, an asset that, refuses to be swayed by the broader panic.
I picture the mountain climbers functioning a lot like high-end noise-canceling headphones.
That's a good way to look at it.
The market is blasting all these chaotic, unpredictable frequencies, and the algorithm is constantly calculating the exact inverse waveform to create a pocket of absolute silence.
Right. And then, on the flip side, you have the wave riders.
Who definitely do not want silence.
No, not at all. Their surging force tracking doesn't want stillness. It is hunting for phase-locked momentum.
So they're chasing the storm.
They're scanning the exact same chaotic environment as the climbers, but instead of trying to cancel out the noise, they're running probability matrices to find a frequency of momentum they can lock onto.
Okay.
They require a mathematical feedback loop where a volume spike cascades into a sustained trend. They literally need the jagged edges of the market to generate alpha.
It's like two survivalists in a hurricane.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Like the mountain climber is out there building this heavy, immovable concrete bunker to withstand the winds, while the wave rider is, trying to build a wind turbine to catch the gale force winds and power up.
That is a fantastic analogy.
But here is the operational constraint that I find incredibly restrictive for both of them. Every single unit drafted to these teams is given exactly a 10-session lifespan.
Yep, 10 days.
Just 10 days to prove its underlying thesis.
Right.
Since each unit drafted to these teams is given exactly a 10-session lifespan to prove its logic, how do these completely opposite strategies measure success?
What's fascinating here is that the 10-session constraint is actually the genius of Team AI Labs' experimental design.
Wait, really? How?
Because by giving these two mutually exclusive hypotheses a strictly defined short-term window, you aren't just testing the algorithms.
Right.
You're using the algorithms to triangulate the exact nature of the current market environment.
Oh, I see. So it forces them to be tactical.
Hyper-localized tactical execution. Success for a climber means it successfully mapped the eye of the storm for 10 days.
And for a rider.
Success means it calculated the exact duration of a localized surge before the liquidity vanished.
Wow. Okay, so if both of these strategies are perfectly designed to exploit either total calm or absolute surging chaos within a strict 10-day window, the market data from May 19th must have been mathematically incomprehensible to them.
It was a bloodbath.
Let's look at the actual damage in the daily scorecard, because the current market environment isn't just bad, it looks like a complete anomalous breakdown of the rules.
The numbers are brutal.
They really are. The mountain climbers took a daily score hit of negative 27.9 points.
Heavy structural damage to their equilibrium logic.
Right, but the wave riders, they got absolutely crushed with a negative 48.5 point drop.
A catastrophic failure of momentum tracking.
Yeah, but we should probably clarify for the listener, what do those points actually mean?
Good call. We have to define what those negative points actually represent. In this simulation, points are an internal metric of algorithmic confidence and alpha generation relative to their programmed expectations.
So a big negative score means the math is failing.
Exactly. A 48.5 point drop implies the underlying math of the wave riders didn't just miscalculate a trend. It encountered a statistical environment that actively punished its core operating logic.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Right.
If you look at the major Japanese indices for that exact same session, the surface of the water looks incredibly calm.
Almost deceptively calm.
Yeah. I mean, the mountain climbers' negative 27.9 point hit stands in stark contrast to the Nikkei 225, which showed a relative drop of only negative 1.1 point.
Rarely a scratch.
And the Topi X was at negative 1.6 points. Even the wave riders, with their massive 48.5 point implosion, only saw a divergence of negative 3.4 points against the Nikkei and negative 5.0 against the Topi X.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that vast delta between the algorithmic performance and the benchmark indices is the definition of a systemic divergence.
It's an extreme anomaly.
Right, because the Nikkei and Topitex are heavily weighted averages, stabilized by massive low beta components. They provide an optical illusion of stability.
It essentially masks the underlying reality. It's a rule-changing storm. The indices suggest a standard, maybe slightly bearish session, but the granular unit data reveals an environment where the fundamental mechanisms of momentum and equilibrium are breaking down entirely.
That's right. It represents an abnormal state where historical data just stops working.
Because if a wave rider's algorithm calculates a volume spike as the beginning of a momentum wave, how does a flat market result in a 48-point penalty?
Well, it happens when the structural mechanics of the market shift from continuous flow to isolated liquidity vacuums.
Liquidity vacuums.
Yeah. When the wave rider identifies a surge, it allocates confidence points, expecting secondary and tertiary follow-through. Retail participation, institutional algorithmic piling, basic momentum carry.
Like catching a wave.
Exactly. But in a systemic divergence like this, that volume spike is an anomaly, not a trend. The algorithm commits to the wave, but the liquidity instantly evaporates beneath it.
Oh, man.
The math saw a wave, but the reality was a cliff.
That perfectly explains the failure of the momentum logic. But the mountain climbers failed too, with that 27.9 point drop.
Right, because their noise-canceling logic couldn't find equilibrium.
Because the concept of mean reversion relies on a predictable pendulum swing. If an asset drops, historical probability suggests a proportional stabilizing bounce.
But on May 19th, the pendulum was simply snapping off its hinges. The volatility wasn't predictable, it was structural decay.
So when both pure stillness and pure momentum strategies fail simultaneously against a flat macro benchmark.
The underlying physics of the simulated market are fundamentally hostile to structured logic.
Wow. Okay, so if the overarching logic is generating that much negative feedback across the board, that forces us to question what the intake protocols are doing to compensate in real time.
Right, how are they adapting to this broken environment?
Exactly. Which brings us to the contrast between the new talent drafted at 9:00 a.m. Standard Time and the active roster currently fighting in the trenches.
The scouting logs from May 19th reveal a fascinating divergence in behavior between the two teams.
Yeah, because Team Mountain Climbers managed to successfully recruit exactly one new unit into their active roster.
Just one.
Just one. But Team Wave Riders, they scouted 0 candidates. 0. They completely shut down their intake pipeline.
Evaluating that zero draft decision is critical for understanding the sophistication of the Wave Riders architecture.
See, I want to challenge that a bit. Is drafting 0 units actually a calculated strategy?
You think it's an error?
I mean, when I see a 48.5 point drop followed immediately by a total cessation of the intake protocol, I look at that as a buffer overflow. Like, did the algorithm simply short circuit? Yeah. When your foundational logic takes that severe of a penalty, the probability matrices required to greenlight a new unit might simply crash, forcing a default null output. Is it just a broken algorithm, or is it a defensive mechanism, like a captain refusing to lower lifeboats because the sea is simply too violent?
While a system overload is a plausible hypothesis in simpler models, we are looking at highly evolved tracking logic here.
Right.
I interpret the zero draft not as a crash, but as an advanced immunity response.
Really? An immunity response?
Yeah, because surging force tracking requires a specific threshold of statistical probability to identify a viable momentum vector.
Right.
The algorithm scanned the entirety of the morning market, processed the liquidity vacuums that punished its active roster, and calculated that the mathematical probability of sustained momentum was absolute zero.
Wow.
Drafting 0 units is the optimal probabilistic move when the environment offers no mathematical path to success.
It recognized that the optimal move in that specific microclimate was not to play.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the mountain climber's equilibrium logic did find a single unit that met its threshold for stillness.
Right. Even in a structurally decaying environment, it calculated that one specific asset possessed enough inverse volatility characteristics to warrant a 10-session deployment.
And that single drafted unit, alongside the veterans currently surviving the tracking period, shifts our focus to the active roster.
The main forces in the trenches.
Right. In an environment swallowing almost every strategy, the survivors provide the most valuable data in the entire log.
The numbers on the active roster are incredibly stark. Out of 4 active mountain climbers currently deployed in this simulation, exactly 1 is holding positive points.
Just 1.
And out of 10 active wave riders out there trying to track momentum, only 3 are holding positive points. We have 14 units fully exposed to a market that is punishing their core programming, and yet 4 of them are somehow remaining mathematically profitable.
Those 4 units represent localized microadaptation.
Beacons in the dark.
Exactly. While the macro environment is actively destroying the overarching algorithmic theories, these specific units have locked onto localized realities that are temporarily detached from the systemic divergence.
It shows us what minimal adaptation looks like in maximum chaos.
They prove that micro-rules can still form and be exploited even when the broader logic fails.
That actually brings us perfectly to the most concrete data in the entire observation log, the 10-session exit protocol.
Because some units actually survived their mandated deployment today.
They did. They finished their 10-day tracking, extracted their data, and finalized their scores. And despite the daily scores being heavily in the red today, the final extraction data tells a very specific story about what kind of assets actually possess the structural integrity to survive this anomaly.
The extraction logs validate the fundamental divide between the two philosophies, even in a hostile climate.
Let's look at the sectors. Team Mountain Climbers, the Equilibrium Hunters, walked away from today's exit protocol with a final total score of positive 10.0 points.
It's a solid win.
And when you look at the sectors that generated those positive points, they extracted from real estate, pulp and paper, and electric power and gas.
Interesting.
Right, and Team Wave Riders finished their exiting protocol with positive 9.6 points, entirely derived from units in electric appliances and warehousing and harbor transportation service. So what does this all mean?
Analyzing those specific sectors through a technical lens reveals exactly why they succeeded where the rest of the algorithms failed.
It connects right back to their core philosophies. The climbers found their absolute stillness in low beta, high asset value infrastructure. Real estate, utilities like power and gas, heavy manufacturing like pulp and paper.
Physical, grounded sectors.
Exactly. These sectors inherently resist systemic liquidity shocks. Their valuations are anchored to physical reality and long-term contracts.
Which makes them mathematically resistant to the chaotic, rapid-fire volatility that punished the rest of the market.
They provided the exact inverse waveform the equilibrium algorithm was hunting for.
And the Wave Rider's success is equally revealing. Warehousing, harbor transportation, electric appliances.
They found their momentum in the flow of goods and tech.
Right. Those sectors represent high-velocity physical supply chains. They are cyclical, high-turnover industries driven by the actual movement of global commerce and consumer demand.
Which can operate independently of pure financial market sentiment.
Precisely. The momentum logic couldn't find sustained trends in purely financial instruments today, but it successfully tracked the surging force of physical economic velocity.
It is genuinely incredible to see abstract mathematical tracking philosophies perfectly map onto the physical realities of the Japanese economy.
It really is.
But to truly contextualize the May 19th data, we have to pull back from the daily battle and look at the total season standings. What does this brutal day mean for Team AI Lab's overarching mission?
The season totals force us to evaluate the compounding effects of these strategies over time, rather than isolating a single anomalous session.
Let's run the numbers. For Team Mountain Climbers, despite taking that 27.9-point hit today, their total season points stand at positive 34.3.
So their logic of finding stillness has actually accumulated a robust positive balance across the broader tracking period.
Right. But Team Wave Riders, they are facing a much harsher reality. Their total season points are sitting at negative 36.4.
Wow.
Yeah, the anomaly of the current market has systematically dismantled the momentum tracking logic over the long term.
That specific divergence in the season totals indicates that the current simulated environment heavily penalizes trend-following behaviors while marginally rewarding mean reversion. Even if both strategies suffer catastrophic localized failures on specific days like May 19th.
And if you just stare at the negative 48.5 daily score for the Wave Riders, it's very easy to classify this entire session as a defeat. But we have to maintain that cold, forward-looking research stance.
Absolutely. Because evaluating algorithms through the binary lens of winning and losing entirely misses the point of running a live stress test in the first place.
Today's harsh results are not a defeat. Every single negative point scored by these algorithms today is not a loss. It is a purchased lesson.
This raises an important question about how machine learning works. In the realm of pure algorithmic research, a catastrophic failure in an anomalous environment is far more valuable than a successful execution in a predictable one.
Exactly. When the Wave Riders algorithm gets punished for tracking a false momentum signal, it is fundamentally mapping the negative space of this systemic divergence.
It is recording the exact mathematical parameters of liquidity vacuum so that the model can adjust its internal probability matrices.
It's the necessary sacrifice of simulated units to gather precious observation data, paving the way for future victories.
You're identifying the core mechanism of machine evolution. I mean, if an algorithm only operates in a calm, highly predictable terrarium, it merely reinforces its existing biases.
It doesn't learn anything.
Right. Exposing the logic to an environment where historical data stops functioning, where the major indices mask the structural decay of the microcomponents that forces the system to generate entirely new datasets based on friction and failure.
So the 48 points lost today basically paid for the data required to build immunities for tomorrow.
It perfectly explains the Wave Riders' decision to draft 0 new units.
Right.
That wasn't just a reaction, it was the immediate application of the negative data they were actively purchasing out in the store.
They learned in real time.
The algorithm analyzed the failure of its active roster, calculated the systemic divergence, and instantly updated its intake protocol to preserve capital and operational bandwidth.
That is the ultimate takeaway from the May 19th observation log.
Right.
We are not just watching mathematical models fail. We are watching them gather the requisite intelligence to adapt to an environment that operates outside the boundaries of historical precedent.
We map the parameters of the storm by measuring the wreckage it leaves behind. The data from the destroyed algorithms is precisely what allows the next iteration to survive.
Well said. I want to thank you, the listener, for joining us on this deep dive into the raw data today. It really reminds us of the value of staying coldly objective when everyone else is panicking.
The numbers tell the true story.
Always. But as we close the book on this particular file, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. Something that builds on everything we've analyzed today.
Go for it.
We have watched the mountain climbers exhaust themselves, searching for an equilibrium that barely exists. And the Wave Riders get dismantled, attempting to harness a momentum that instantly evaporates.
Right.
The researchers are treating this as an anomaly, a rule-changing storm that will eventually pass. But if these highly sophisticated algorithms are struggling this hard to find either stillness or momentum in today's environment, while the major indices remain completely unbothered, what happens if this storm isn't just a passing anomaly?
Oh, that's a chilling thought.
What if chaos is the new baseline reality of the market? Will algorithms need to invent an entirely new philosophy that doesn't just survive the storm, but actually requires it to function?